Why do you like Halo so much? What do you like so much about it? I get that question a lot and I plan on answering it today, but Halo really isn't that easy to explain. What's so special about a first-person shooter set in space? There's like a million of those things. And yeah, that's entirely true. The problem is that on paper, and even at a quick glance, it does look like a mindless first-person shooter in the same vein of Duke Nukem or Doom. It's easy for most people to assume that an FPS can have depth, especially with the influx of shooters in the market since then. But we forget that they can actually be done really well, and Halo is probably the finest example I can think of. Hopefully this video will help others understand why I feel like the Master Chief and the Halo franchise are just as good as Zelda, Mario, and Metal Gear. The strongest part of the Halo franchise for me is the lore of the universe. The Halo series might very well be the last remaining great story in first-person shooters, and because I know somebody's going to bring up Half-Life, I'll address that later, don't worry. The story of the main games, anyway, revolves around the Human Covenant War through the eyes of Master Chief Petty Officer John 117, or Master Chief for short. Kidnapped at the age of 6 by the United Nations Space Command, John was forced to undergo serious military training, political indoctrination, and physical augmentations designed to turn him and the rest of the Spartans into the fiercest warriors in the UNSC. The surgeries and augmentations were so radical and intensive that out of the original 150 Spartan 2s, 30 died during surgery and 12 were crippled. Originally created to give the UNSC an advantage in a war between them and insurrectionist human factions, the Spartans were repurposed into becoming the main tools in winning the Human Covenant War. The Covenant, of course, is the main enemy of the franchise, and describing them is also a little bit complicated. Their belief system revolves around worshipping an ancient alien race known as the Forerunners. They believe that the Forerunners transcended the physical world and became gods through the activation of 7 sacred rings. The leaders of the Covenant are the Prophets, who believe themselves to be the chosen inheritors of the Forerunners' divine technology. In finding ancient Forerunner tech, their goal is ultimately to activate the 7 sacred rings and walk among the gods, and their followers believe that undying faithfulness to their cause will deem them worthy enough to transcend as well. The Human Covenant War was initiated by the Covenant upon discovering evidence that humanity might in fact be the true inheritors of the Forerunners' divine technology, since humans seem to be the only species able to activate Forerunner tech.
I admit, I need your help, but that secret dies with all the rest.
Now that's a lot of story and a lot of interesting dynamics, and I'm going to avoid spoilers in this video because there are plot twists that are better off experiencing firsthand, but what's really impressive about the lore of the universe is how well it translates into each game. Take the game's enemies for example. The Grunts are the weakest and smallest of the bunch and will often flee from you in-game out of sheer terror. They flee because in the lore of the universe they are actually members of the Covenant by force and through slavery. They largely do not actually believe in the Covenant religion and thus show less of an interest in dying for the cause of it.
And nothing, not even the Flood, can stop it.
Ooh.
The Jackals are somewhat similar. Largely, Jackals are mercenaries and not actually believers in the religion. They are aligned with the Covenant only because they have access to more resources and thus more money. And much like the Grunts, you will see Jackals occasionally flee due to their lack of religious conviction. The Brutes and Elites are the opposite. They believe unquestionably in the Covenant religion and are devout and loyal till the end. Which is why you'll never see them flee, and which is why they also happen to fight the toughest. Hunters and Scarabs aren't actually individual creatures or machines, but actually giant biomechanical creatures comprised of hundreds upon thousands of hive-minded worms. What's great about Halo is that there's such an epic story there for you, but it's only there if you want it. You can play it mindlessly, or you can play it fully engulfed in the universe and you'll still have a great time playing it. There are twists, turns, characters joining forces, entire factions joining forces, epic battles, and some fantastic lines of dialogue, all bursting with lore and personality.
Where's the rest of your platoon?
Wasted, Sarge.
And we will be too, sir, if we don't get the hell out of here.
You hit Marine.
No, sir.
Then listen up. When I joined the Corps, we didn't have any fancy schmancy tanks. We had sticks, 2 sticks and a rock for a whole platoon. And we had to share the rock. Buck up, boy. You're one very lucky Marine.
Tie it all together with some of the most iconic soundtracks in video game history and you've got something that feels truly special. The main complaint I see from people is that the Master Chief himself isn't a great character, and while I can see why people think that, again, it all falls back on the lore. This is a man who was bred from the age of 6 years old to be a killing machine trained to obey orders. His character, in the beginning, is meant to be subdued. He's got his little sense of humor, but he never loses focus of the objective, and he's never truly incredibly brooding. And it isn't until a deeply depressing moment in Halo 4 that he finally breaks. The Halo story is about the universe first and foremost, but it's also about Master Chief being the soldier the military needed him to be, and how that ultimately ends up breaking him as a human being. All of that wrapped up in an FPS with tight controls, a great physics engine, great vehicle play, and a sweet sandbox. That's just a single player story though, so what do I like about the multiplayer? Well, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. All 4 games, while similar at their cores, are very, very different in terms of competitive multiplayer. It's something that I'm going to have to go a bit more in depth with, but this video is already going on quite a bit, so I think I'm going to leave the multiplayer part of this video for a later date. Anyway, I hope this video helped you guys understand why I absolutely adore the Halo series, at least from a single player and story-driven perspective. It may not be your cup of tea, but I could spend years in the Halo universe, and I truly recommend it to anybody looking for a deeply inspired story, awesome characters, and an overall enjoyable experience. I'll see you next time.